Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Like, share, comment, subscribe, become a channel member where you'll get access to all archived videos. Support Black Male Media, support independent media. Super chats enabled. Super thanks for the replay gang. Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Dr. Thunder Music, all one word. Spell out the word doctor. And those of you that want to buy me a sandwich, go ahead and shoot a Cash App. Sandwich gang. Make sure you spell sandwich correctly. Sandwich has two M's, if you didn't know that. Hashtag sandwich gang. Today on Case Closed. Is Robert Kennedy Jr. really anti-establishment? Is he really anti-establishment? You know, in fairly recent history, we remember Donald Trump coming down the stairway in the hotel there, and once that happened, that was sort of the introduction to the idea of him running as president, and then it was pretty all hands on deck as far as trying to find dirt, smear the guy, and all this kind of stuff. And wherever you are politically, you have to acknowledge that it was a pretty unique sort of event, the way that the media sort of in lockstep and in unison sort of came after Donald Trump. You could think it's for a good reason. You could think that it's bogus, but we have to acknowledge that that definitely was the case. And it's interesting that it seems as though the media is at it again. But this time, it's not from a dirty racist conservative, a dirty racist Republican. Now it's for someone that is clearly progressive. But he has dared to ask certain questions that have been deemed inappropriate, that have deemed to be dangerous for people's health and stuff associated with the jab. Now, I've heard folks on different sides of the political spectrum claim that the way that they have been trying to come after Robert Kennedy Jr. is even more aggressive than going after Trump. And going after Trump has been like a full-time job. It's kept a lot of folks, a lot of talking heads. It's kept them busy. It's kept them in work. And matter of fact, so much has been the case is that this dude has been out of office for all these years, and they're still talking about him. So, is this really an issue of Democrat or Republican, right versus left? Or is it more of an issue of establishment versus anti-establishment? So, we've got lots to talk about today. It's going to be an exciting show with an all-star panel as usual. 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sundays. Make sure y'all put that on your calendar and show up every week. Always thought-provoking commentary, conversation, debate, however you want to contextualize it. But we've got a great show for you tonight, or this afternoon, late afternoon, early evening, whatever time period we're in right now. The case closed. Is Robert Kennedy Jr. really anti-establishment? Is he really anti-establishment? Let's go. Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. What's happening?
What up? What up? What up? Seems like I'm still a little grainy. I'll probably remain grainy the whole time. But can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you good.
Okay, excellent. Let's get right into it. So, ever since the advent of television and perhaps even radio broadcast, well, most importantly, television and how it dovetails with presidential elections, it's been noted that aesthetics are important. Hey, not a massive, that's a Captain Obvious statement, right? You appeal to people's senses and they respond to it. Help it, okay? So how you look, how you sound, you're not going to be a short, fat, bald president in the modern era. As a matter of fact, you look at CEOs, they're all about leaders, very important. So having said that, okay, let's begin with LAR. Okay, no, let's go to Kaiser. Okay, Robert F. Kennedy. Now, it's fair. Let me fairly state what the situation is. He has spasmodic dysphonia. If you kind of break the word down there, Kaizo, etymology wise, you could probably see what that is. It's a muscle type thing,
Yeah,
spasms down there that
spasticated
affects your
speaking.
voice. Yeah. So what how does that strike you? Now, also add in there how you think is going to strike the general population. I think for sure it's not going to be ignored. It cannot be ignored, and it's going to affect certain kinds of numbers. So talk about how can you stand listening to him, and how do you think people are going to respond? Then we go to Dr. Thunder and then LAR.
Yeah, actually, I was trying to do some research on him this week, and I tried listening to it. The horse's mouth. It was difficult to get through. I had to put the subtitles on to try to translate what he's saying because at first I thought it was a live stream that he was on that was making that weird sound. Then I checked other videos with better quality. Then I realized, okay, that's how he sounds. I think for me personally, and I consider myself the highest IQ individual in the world. If I can't listen to him, right? What about the average Dusty who literally just wants to hear things that sound nice? So I think ultimately this is going to hurt him. But obviously, to circumvent that issue, he is a lineage. He's got a lineage factor, right? Right. He's related to two greats, his uncle and also his father, who helped sort of get the Dusties.
Got it. Okay, cool. So aesthetically, he might be able to circumvent that, might be able to overcome that aspect by having that lineage aspect there to kind of appeal to people, and that might be enough. So, Dr. Thunder, what do you think about you can avoid hearing what you hear. You're a musician, so how do you take in his voice, and how do you think it'll affect his candidacy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That is.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I do think it's going to have an impact because uh, if we face the facts, it's not really about the best political strategy. It's not about the best policy comprehension, the best ability to articulate the issues. Um, it's not the best skills, you know, working across the aisle, as it were, coming up with solutions that seem to solve problems for multiple parties. It doesn't seem to be those kinds of qualifications or skill sets or the ability to lead well. You know, the whole administrative IQ, as it were. It doesn't seem to be about any of those things. Charisma, and even if you consider charisma as potentially a positive thing, there doesn't seem to be the sort of requisite substance behind the charisma usually, so that the charisma can be actually positive. Like used to sell something that's of value. It just is. Yeah. So it really devolves to things like, what does the person look like? Do I feel good when they talk? Um, did they do the requisite demonizing the other other folks and make themselves appear to be, you know, lesser of an issue, a less scary issue, that kind of thing. Or, you get the idea. It's not really like we have good choices here. It's more like you can do the superficial, the kind of not really deep kind of choice, or you can choose something that maybe they know a lot, but could be some nefarious stuff afoot and New World Order and all of that kind of stuff. So I don't know.
How does it strike you?
Usually, I mean, at some level, I probably am. If two parties were exactly the same, and one of them I just had a better, uh, there was some superficial stuff that I dug, then okay. But if you're talking about significant difference between the substance, then superficial stuff is not going to matter to me. And so the sound in his voice, um, you know, his physical appearance, any of that kind of stuff, I don't care. I don't care about that stuff.
Fair, 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 fair. Shout out to Kaizorian Empire for the $5 super chat, 500 Kenyan shillings, right? And he's saying, hey, the degeneracy in articulation. First you have Obama, then you go to Trump, then you go to Biden, and now you get to JFK. Yeah, I get the point. But he's actually quite articulate, in terms of his ability to put, concepts together into words and put it all together, given the fact that his voice, given the fact that he has that condition, spasmodic dysphonia. But thank you very much, Kaizo, for that. Now, let me go to LAR. You've heard his voice. Can you tolerate it? Do you think people are going to be shocked when they hear? Because a lot of people, they just like for the first time in some debate, and it might be interesting to see how people respond. What do you think, Eliar?
Hmm. Can I tolerate it? Not really. But most people don't listen to the president anyways. But this is a crapshoot for me because we kind of act like, in retrospect, we make fun of Ronald Reagan when he was president. We're making fun of Joe Biden now as president. We made fun of George Bush and his son as president. Uh, to be looked at as not that bright or having issues, like I forgot the politician's name. It's not John Edwards, the one that was like, "Pyaw!" He lost his whole
Oh
thing because
yeah, yeah. The doctor
you
from
know,
the little state in
yeah.
Northeast.
So it's like
Dean, Howard
this.
Dean.
Yeah, that's right,
Thank
Howard
you.
Dean.
It could be either that or it could be I can't believe he won. Like at this point in America, you don't know. You
Anything
know,
can happen.
yes. Think once once John McCain ran and they just at the last minute, I knew politics was pretty much it was a done deal at that point. You don't even need to run with somebody. Hey, you bum off the street, come here. At this point, doesn't matter who and what they're going to vote for, and I don't think they care what people say.
Hmm.
Hmm. Interesting that you mentioned Dr. Thunder. You were talking about the aesthetic aspect of the presidency. It's not about administrative IQ and certain other things. Um, in a certain way, it is fitting with the role in the sense that the president is a figurehead. And as a matter of fact, that word president means, for example, rather than say somebody, the correct way to say it is rather than say somebody is a president, you should say he is president, as in he presides. Dr. Thunder is president of, you get what I'm saying? Like he is presiding. And what is it to preside? You're not actually doing anything, right? You're there, you're sitting on the chair, you're saying, okay, you speak, okay, you speak. You're presiding over the happenings, right? And that's what the president generally is. That's how it was thought of. So yeah, it does kind of make sense that you want him to be somebody that people can look up to in certain ways. Blah blah blah. Now let's start to versus anti. Get to some of the nitty gritty of the topic here. You that's a very low resolution, but it's a buzz phrase that is out there in the media, just kind of thrown around. But really, it's about institutions, right? You cannot be a Kennedy and then like him, and he was, I believe, and still is a lawyer in the environmental space, right? Doing the things that he does, having the connections that he has, and not be part of some establishment. It's a question of which institutions and what kinds of reform you are looking for, and
Hey,
then whom is,
hey,
is with you and whom is against you, right? Because to say, oh, there is this crap.
hey, real quick, we're kind of borging pretty bad, and so what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch to
Yeah.
avatars. We'll switch to avatars
Okay.
for LAR, and for you, Ike, I already have something loaded. So I've got an image for you, LAR, if you want to go to your other screen, and I've got an image for you, Ike. And let's see here.
Excellent. Yeah. Checking for you. Where's the super chat at?
Yeah, you see, this is what I mean by African internet, Kenya. So shout out to you guys want to come to Kenya, hit me up, because here we have perfect internet, we've got perfect hotel services, even better than America. Shout out.
So let's see your camera.
Oh no, oh, no. You got it, Ike.
Um, yeah, but have you taken off? You're gonna take off my
Yeah, I'll take you off
or
too.
should I? Okay, cool. But you okay, cool. So I'll go on then. Oregon.
Yeah, you're so
I
borging.
hope not too badly, right? I'm gonna have to wait for you to turn it off and see if it helps, right?
All right, go ahead. Well, you're going to have to turn the thing off. I have an image for you though.
Okay, cool. So I have to got it. Let me do that.
There we
Okay,
go.
I
We're
see.
all
Just
set.
pull it off. So does that sound better?
Yeah. So I
Maybe.
think this is going to work better. So continue on.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we shall continue. And I was saying that Dr. Thunder was talking about establishment versus anti-establishment, and I say that's a low-resolution buzzword that's out there in the mainstream media. And there's nothing wrong with low-resolution type of terms. However, it does not go below that, or it does not ever increase in resolution. It's not about institutions versus, it's not about establishment versus anti-establishment, because you cannot be someone like a Kennedy and be a lawyer in the environmental space, have the connections that you have, haven't gone through the situations that you've gone through, and not be part of some kind of establishment, right? It's a question of institutions, the institutions that you represent, the institutions that perhaps you're trying to see reformed slash and or destroyed, okay, depending on the kind of anti-institutionalist that you are, and those whom are against you, right? So there is no anti-establishment person that rises to the level of being president if you want to get to a higher level of resolution about it. So before we get to that though, what I'm going to ask you here, Kaiser, and I want you to respond, Dr. Thunder and Lab, or let's say he's talking about the military industrial complex. Let's call it regulatory capture. Regulatory capture is the means by which the regulatory agencies are captured by the sectors in the economy that they're supposed to regulate, right? So you have a revolving door from these companies into the legislature, for example, or you have a revolving door where generals become consultants at certain military industrial complex type companies, and you have regulatory capture, therefore. Another way to think about this is the deep state. So you have the administrative arm supposed to regulate some segment of the economy, but those people in that segment actually fund the senators to write certain bills and are actually populating the institutions that, you get the idea of regulatory capture. So he says that kind of thing. It appeals to people. Donald Trump says, hey, drain the swamp. But is it actually actionable? Okay. What are you going to do? What can you do? Are you going to tear down certain types of institutions? Are you going to stop the people not being able to lobby? Ever since we were warned about the military industrial complex, people like to repeat that phrase. But what can you actually do about it? It's now just become a way to just garner people around you. And I'm being perhaps a little ungracious with this characterization. Garner people do about it. Kaizo, what do you think about this sentiment which I just laid out? For all this anti-institution, oh, it's regulatory capture, there's a revolving door at the top. But what are you going to do about that revolving door? What are your thoughts, Kaizo? And then Dr. Thunder and then Eliar.
Yeah. So okay. So in relation to the whole anti-establishment component, and everything else that to do with the military, industrial military complex, I think there's several steps here. So I'll begin with saying, let's say, outlining the problems to the guests first. So some of the problems is obviously power taken to an extreme stances, whereby you actually lose some of the reasons why, let's say, that power was consolidated. So that power goes against democracy. So in this sense, I would say JF Kennedy's stance is, okay, well, the industrial military complex has become too uncontrolled. It has become its own um, self creating entity. We've created a whole life form. That's basically the argument there. Now, there is an element here about once you have something that continuously feeds itself and also feeds on the global market, whereby, let's say, the American economy relies on it, it has reached to a point where democracy now, there is no difference between the political parties, between the left or the right. Both of them are pro-war parties for American agendas. However, clear ways American interests because be in the bathwater. And if that's the case, America cannot do that. So meaning I don't see any easy ways, Ike, for that to be reestablished. Soft power as the main mechanism for American imperialism.
Well put there. Well put there. So you're saying that the organism is created. We take the military industrial complex as one of the examples of regulatory capture. It happens also in pharma. It happens with the environment as well. Now, remember, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is an environmental lawyer, and while he was out there suing these companies, he realized it's not just these big companies that are problematic. Also, the government and the governmental agencies that are supposed to regulate these companies are also on the take. And as a matter of fact, oh my God, they're the same people. When he looked at the top, you're like, oh, here's this guy in this agency. Next minute, he's in the company. Next minute, he's in an agency. So it's a go against it, you have said, Kaizo, is now to take away its moral standing, right? Which you're not going to kill it. You're just going to take away its moral standing, and you're making it now less effective in terms of United States. Now, Dr. Thunder, what are your swamp? You can talk to your blue in the face, but it doesn't particular actual plan for breaking up this thing, breaking up the regulatory capture. As Kaizo mentioned, the American economy actually depends on this type of system a lot of times, right? Well, what are your thoughts, Dr. Thunder?
Yeah. Can you rephrase the question? Part of what you said got cut out.
It seems to be the case that when you talk about the deep state draining the swamp or the military industrial complex, there doesn't seem to be an actionable plan for actually draining the swamp or breaking up the deep state revolving door between the companies and the agencies that are supposed to regulate them. They just talk about it like, hey, it's bad. But we don't seem to have an actionable plan. And I smell the same thing with Robert F. Kennedy here, where he's saying the right kinds of things. And I'm like, eh. So, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, you have to have there's certain strategies that have been highly effective, and folks notice that, and you'd almost be, as a politician, you'd almost be derelict in your duties if you didn't use strategies that work, even if they are total hogwash. It's kind of like, well, I think that this strategy is hogwash, but no one's been able to win the presidency unless they do this strategy. I'm not going to do this strategy. So then perhaps you're saying that you don't actually really want to be president. And maybe you don't want to be president and you just want to run to give people an option. But uh, yeah, that's how that drain the swamp sort of language, talking about the deep state, all of that kind of stuff. And and it's not that we shouldn't talk about the deep state. We should talk about the deep state so people understand what's really going on. And president can promise all kinds of stuff. They can make all kinds of claims, but most of that stuff they're not going to be able to actually do, because you're talking about something like 97% of the employees, governmental employees, are going to be the same. Those employees that actually are involved in doing stuff, they have their boots on the ground. They understand the logistics. Yeah, you have some other folks. You have a bunch of other folks that change, but they're probably not the ones that actually are boots on the ground, really knowledgeable about what's going on. They themselves are involved in the same sort of political gamesmanship and all of that.
Well said. Well said. One of the kinds of rules or propositions that interest from being calcified and having a stronghold are sunset laws on legislation, right? So you have legislation which are meant to kind of regulate a certain industry through a particular agency, but then every 10 years you say, oh, the law is done. We're not going to change the people in the agency, okay, because you need to have this institutional memory on how things run. But the way in which you operated, which was legislated by the Senate, let's say, that thing has to change. And typically, it's something that people give lip service to. But for example, when people talk about the swamp, it's rare that these politicians come out and name a name, say, hey, Secretary of X used to work at this company. And prior to that was all these other people, and these are the things that they put in that make sure that Boeing stays in power. They never really get quite that specific. They just kind of say certain things. What are your thoughts, LAR, about drain the swamp, the deep state? Hey, look over there. There's the boogeyman. We all know the boogeyman, but we all depend on the boogeyman, the military industrial complex. We need to eat. We need to give Ukraine these weapons so that we can eat. But here, that's the boogeyman. But I mean, what are your thoughts generally, LAR?
It's, to me, it's just all a lie, a hustle that people swear that they're fighting against something when, truth be told, they're not, and they never wanted to, and they never will. You've watched one too many movies. Nothing is that you're doing. The other thing, do anything that's anti-establishment. Politicians are establishment. So a lot of the stuff that people are saying they're willing to fight for and fight against are the same establishments that cut their check. So I don't care if you, oh, I don't like those people over there, but guess what? It's the same environment that cuts your check, even if you're on the opposite side of that equation. The same people that cut Democrats check is the same people that cut Republicans check. It's the same people that cut people in the deep states check. And the people who are anti-deep state, the same people. So a lot of times it's just, to me, it's just like this American manifest destiny / hierarchy / class / racism fantasy that, I'm fighting for and against something, in my mind. But truth be told, you need the very establishments that you're complaining about to keep you afloat. Nobody in this country who want to play this game like, well, I can survive. No, you can't. No, you can't. That's why you got a government in the first place. So to me, it's just like, what do we, people want to think that this is Taken or this is Star Wars slash politics. Go for it. But I know good and well that you ain't gonna live without the same government. You guess what? Today is what's the 8th? The 8th or the 9th?
Ninth.
A couple of
Ninth.
days ago, you were just praising the government on July 4th. God bless America. Let's get some fireworks. Let's say hallelujah to America. And now all of a sudden it's the deep state. It's ridiculous.
Okay. Let's. I want to take a little temperature here in terms of, and Kaiser, you're not even in the United States and you're not voting, but in terms of, you have Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis. There's this Indian guy, Vivek, forget his last name. He typically is now polling at around 1%. And you have Mr. RFK Jr., you have Joe Biden, obviously. What I'm trying to get here is lukewarm, hot, or cold. Is there anybody in this race that you find appealing? And it doesn't, in any way, right? And why so? And no equivocation and all that. You can talk about all that stuff. I don't want to hear, well, as a black man in the United States, just, hey, is any simple temperature there? So I want an actual temperature reading, not some quantum all over the place type stuff. Beginning with Kaizo, does anybody appeal to you in this presidential race that you know of?
Okay, good question. So, okay, I can give my opinion as an interested party, as a person actually from a different side of the globe. I would, if I was, let's say, able to have a political influence, which I do, I could pay someone to vote in my stead, or several people. So in this case, my vote, my words do matter. So if I would choose, I would choose a Vivek guy, right? First of all, I like the entrepreneur types simply because they do things. They do things in the real world and they make things happen. They're not simply talking heads or armchair politicians. So that's one hand. A second hand, he does have a similar Trumpian sort of appeal of, focusing inwards, right? Like taking America more of an, let's say, insular, yeah, of course, still understanding the geopolitics, but more focusing on inward stuff, bringing back jobs to America and all that kind of stuff. I think that, as a globalist, that actually protects the rest of us from America's very imperialist nature recently. So, him also, I like the way he speaks. He's a lot more, let's say, not just articulate, but is also able to actually sound decent. Now, obviously, Indian Americans coming from a Hindu sort of origin, I don't know how much he's going to, let's say, reach the hearts and minds of the average population. Obama was very unique in his minority, so I doubt he will actually move far enough. So I think mostly, I'll choose him for those more insular, less imperialist sort of rhetoric that he sort of expresses. And obviously, as a religious person, I would also want someone with key Christian values that I appreciate.
All right. I'm glad you're a Christian again. Dr. Thunder, you, anyone from any party running for president currently that appeals to you, no matter how superficially or not, right? Who is there anybody and why?
No. Once Joe Exotic withdrew from the Libertarian, uh, from Libertarian consideration, I was out. No, no. Yeah, the answer is no. The answer is no. I I see through all of this kind of um, it's a game. Uh, I think of big P politics as being the true grift. All of us are talking about how such and such is a grift, and now people are saying the red pill's a grift, and then everybody else is a grift, and you know grift is everything now. So everything's being called a grift, and it's interesting because the true grift is big P politics. That's the true grift. And if you use grift when you're talking about big P politics and then use grift in any other sense, then uh, you're doing disservice to the definition of the word by using it to describe, other things. Because we're not really talking about stuff that's on par, right? There's so much, corruption and backwards stuff, and there's such an attempt to deceive people, and there's so much more money to be made, and so much of a big reward for pulling the wool over people's eyes in the big P politics realm. And so I kind of see through that. And so no, there is not for at least for president, there's not someone that I'm like, yeah, that's the person that I want. Um, if I was to answer a different question, maybe, or is one of these less offensive to me? If we were talking about the three that are pictured in the thumbnail, uh, Trump is probably the least offensive to me. But all of them are somewhat offensive to me.
Did I drop off? Am I still here? Can you hear
No,
me?
you're still there. We just have
Oh, interesting.
we have another guest here. It's
Gotcha.
BGS. Let me get an image for you
Salute.
quick. But go ahead. Keep going, Ike.
Yeah, so LAR, anybody that appeals to you and why? And I'm going to second what Kaizo said regarding Vivek. I kind of like him for the same reasons that he mentioned. However, the whole Indian thing, I don't know how long, I don't know how many more generations before we're going to start seeing Asians in general, and then you're talking about South Asians. Um, there's a they have a different kind of barrier to cross there. However, LAR, anyone appealing to you, no matter how superficially, when it comes to the presidential race so far?
No, no, I could care less about. I don't think there's anybody of all the almost 20 something people. I don't think anybody's trying to fix the economy. It's all other stuff. You know, so, so inflation. You can't
I
fix
like that.
this nation if you're
Yeah.
not gonna fix the economy. If you're really not gonna fix, just yeah. All the rest of the stuff is superficial. Who I want to see, and you know, you know what this is? This is woke politics 101 that acts like it's not woke. You know, there's nobody. You got authors, spiritual advisors, teachers, lifelong politicians, like you said, entrepreneurs. Nobody who can actually fix the economy. People who work for the CIA. Pick your poison.
Well put there. Now, I tend to agree with you there in the sense of, on the one hand, you have woke. On the other hand, you have culture warrior. The woke actually tends to be more effective in getting their things through. Culture warrior, besides certain groups like the Federalist Society, they tend not to be as effective. Now, generally speaking, let me say this: generally speaking, conservatives, and this is part of the reason why the world tends to always move towards what we call liberal. Part of it is perception. Okay, let's not get into that necessarily. But another part is that conservatives are not as active. Okay, they just aren't. The conservative temperament is not to sit around thinking about the world and the politics and what's right out there and what's wrong out there. They mess with their Bud Light, generally speaking, they should be generally fine. So the out woke or culture warrior stuff when the deficit is growing to both raise taxes and also drive, to quit some of the military talking about, which is one of the things that Kennedy gives lip service to. But these are the actual substantive things in the sense that, hey, you can just keep on increasing this deficit, raising the debt ceiling every other time, and having to then increase the interest rate. And basically, what's going on right now is the boomers are screwing the generations below them so that they can retire nicely. Okay, that's one way to look at it demographically. They have this massive generation that holds trillions of dollars, the richest generation that's ever existed in the world, and they want to keep their wealth with themselves so they can retire nicely and die off, and the millennials will be screwed, so on and so forth. But anyways, BGS. Okay, I want to ask you two questions since you just came in here. The first one is I want to get
Uh-huh.
your thoughts as to this establishment versus anti-establishment thing. So my point is this: you have people who will come in like Donald Trump. They'll say, "Drain the swamp," the deep state.
Mhm.
You have somebody who is more articulate, like Robert F. Kennedy, talking about regulatory capture and the revolving door between the agencies and the companies they're supposed to regulate, right? The military-industrial complex, that same revolving door type stuff. So people point to that. They call it the deep state, they call it corruption, regulatory capture, snowball plan. Something that they say that will actually nip that thing at the bud, or like, well, what are we supposed to do? We understand that it's a massive organism that now it has become the state itself. It keeps itself alive and so on and so forth. What are your thoughts about this appealing to people regarding the deep state? And then we'll get to the next question. Appealing to people regarding the deep state, but not really having any way to take down the deep state, if you will.
You can't take down the deep state because it's so intertwined in every level of government, really every level of communication that you really can't take it down. And plus, the deep state knows everything that you've ever done wrong. So you can try to take down the deep state, but the deep state can actually take you down too. So yeah, are politicians willing to sacrifice their careers trying to take on the deep state when nobody's hands are actually clean? You see, I mean, there's a
Hmm.
few people that have tried. You got one right now that's going through how many court appeals? Okay, they're there. You know they're there. Everybody knows that they're there, and everybody knows that in a complex society like the United States, there's always a deep state. I can't think of one that doesn't have a deep state. That's this advanced and this complex. You look at Rome. Rome had a deep state. Greece had a deep state. There's always a deep state when you have an advanced complex society like this. So you can't take them out because guess what? Those are the people that also. So who you gonna take out? How you gonna take them out? There's too many of us. All those people, also keep your secrets. How you gonna take them out? That'll be my question.
100%
Can you
makes
guys hear
sense.
me?
Number one, it's inevitable in the sense that
Hmm.
I'm I'm sorry
Yeah,
here.
we heard you.
There's some
Okay.
okay. Yeah. Yeah, we can definitely hear you. What you said, I just wanted to kind of highlight regarding the inevitability when you get to a large, complex system of having an
Mm-hmm.
the administrative aspect of it being the biggest aspect. These days,
Mm-hmm.
it's called managerial capitalism in the private sector, right? So you have
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurial capitalism, which is the guy that comes out, he's John Galt, he's going to create something, but when he
Mm-hmm.
succeeds, because he succeeded, then you're going to have the massive administrative or managerial capitalism that comes after. We see the
You
same thing.
can't have
It's
you can't you can't have a John Galt without a managerial society building the platforms and building the systems so that you can succeed. They're intertwined. You can't have one without the other.
All right, shout out to Obama. You didn't build that as he said. Now, the second question is regarding what you think about RFK Jr.'s voice. Okay, we know that aesthetics matter. How does it strike you
Hmm.
personally? Can you tolerate listening to him, and what do you think? How do you think people are going to receive him when they hear his voice?
His name,
Most people have not
the,
haven't heard it. I don't think.
well, that for the last 60 years. So his name carries weight. The Kennedy name has carried weight for a very long time. So with the tragedy, his father and his uncle and stuff like that, and all of his uncles, his whole family. So the name carries weight. It's almost like royalty as far as politics is concerned. So just the name alone, it's just like if you were a Bush, the name does carry weight. So his name is probably carries more weight than his voice, and that's why he's a problem to some politicians. Okay. So the people
And
will. It's because his name. People are already listening to him. Would you listen to Robert Kennedy Jr. if his name wasn't Kennedy?
good point. Probably not. Anyone in the race, left, right, center, third party, whatever, anybody that appeals to you for any reason in this particular presidential race.
It appeals to me. Hmm. Not particularly. Not particularly. Kennedy's probably the only one because I'm curious about what his angle is. Is he going to be a throwback to the FDR type quasi socialism that got us like off the out of the depression and actually got us through World War II and set up this 50s and 70s? Is he going to be? Is he the throwback? I don't know. Well, because he does carry that name and he does mention his family legacy. Is he going to be a throwback? Just like with Putin, Putin after socialism and after perestroika, basically, he was a throwback to the old Russia. Is Kennedy going to be that throwback?
Hmm. So, one of the things that Kennedy highlighted, and there are video clips out there of him going to the border. He took a trip
Hmm.
to the border. I don't really know of any other presidential candidates that have done that. So I'm going to start with you, BGS, and then we're going to go around the panel here regarding the immigration thing.
Hmm.
And when he went there, it was more of a reportage, as they call it, right? He wasn't really making a political point. He was just saying, hey, look, here's the border. Here's a hole in the wall. These people are coming in. Here's the kind of corruption. Here's the ways in which the people actually are being abused or taken advantage of. What are we going to do?
Hmm.
What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Now, it seems to be the case. Now, the border issue is not a complicated one, the border by
Hmm.
itself. However,
Right.
whenever you bring it up, people say, oh, we can't talk about it. We have to talk about comprehensive immigration reform. And it's like, dude, fix the leak. And they're like, no, 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 no. We can't fix the leak until we talk about until we talk about how we're gonna clean the house and the new color and the carpeting and how we're gonna what color do we repaint the ceiling after we take out the stains? Like, fix the leak. Now, there is probably a reason why people want that thing going on. Certain politicians want this thing to be endless, right? Because indeed there are issues with, let's say, labor, and one of the reasons why the labor market
Hmm.
remains industry and restaurants, people cannot find American restaurants cannot find people to work there. You need these immigrants, but then there's no real need to tie it
Cheap
to the
labor.
border.
Cheap
Why
labor.
do you think that yes, they want cheap labor. Now, but why do you think what are your so there it's an open question in the sense that on the one hand, it seems to be people want to tie the border to immigration and immigration policy in general. When the border is a simple fix the leak, do you believe in open borders or not question. And then we can get there. And then secondly, what do you think about what is good immigration policy regarding cheap labor, regarding perhaps it suppressing the wages of those whom are gridlock, whereby you can't talk about the border unless you talk about what they call comprehensive, and then nothing ever happens. And then number two, what is your thought of importing cheap labor and its effects?
Go back to slavery, right? What is America based on? Cheap labor, right? So from the very beginning, this whole American enterprise is based on cheap labor, slave labor. That's what it's based on. So When you can't have low wage labor, you export your economy or your industries outside the country. Capitalism is based on what? Exploitation of labor. It always is, always has been. And immigrants is just one part of that. Europe doesn't have, okay, you, people immigrate, you pay people what they do, everybody else makes. Okay, that's why that. Then then you can keep Social Security system knows where every immigrant is because they have to file a Social Security number, right, to actually get paid. They know when there's multiple Social Security numbers. I think there was a report maybe 15 years ago where this one woman had 300 people working under her Social Security number. They know where these people are. They know where these people work. They know what's going on. If they wanted to stop it, they could. The thing is to do that, you can't pay. Your farm worker can't make $5 an hour or whatever they pay them now. You look at Florida right now. They're complaining is because they stopped illegal immigration. They actually stopped it. Florida actually said we don't want any illegal immigrants working here. Guess what? They stopped it almost completely. And now you have crops rotting in the field because you don't have workers that's coming to work that stuff. You can stop it. Okay, if you can't stop people from crossing the border. If United States satellites can stop a single person from jumping over a fence and they can spot them, you can spot people jumping the fence across the border if you want to. You don't want to, so let's stop playing. You can stop cocaine from being shipped in, right? With in a little tiny satchel coming across the border, but you can't stop 100 people from jumping the fence. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? They know where these people are. They can keep track of every phone call, every phone call, every text message that you make, but you can't stop people from crossing the border. Really. In other words, let's stop playing. Republican and Democrats, everybody's looking the other way and pointing fingers because it's politics. But the thing is, the Republicans know that these industries that the industries that you support cannot function without illegal immigrants. During COVID, half the people that worked at those meatpacking plants were illegal immigrants. Okay, they could have shut it down, but the thing is, what would cause a whole ripple in the food supply if you done that. If you stop illegal immigration in the fields in California, in the South, guess what's the whole ripple across the whole country about the food supply is going to get hurt. So instead of doing this stuff, okay, you pay these people less than what they're worth. Basically, they had Democrats and Republicans had a guest worker plan to actually have these people apply for seasonal work, come over, make your money, go back home, and they give you a card. They'll give you a temporary a green card to come over, do your bid, signed by your employer. You get paid, you go back home. Everybody agreed to it. Okay, but the thing is, they would have to pay these people fair wages, which is they do not want to do. You have illegal people, legal Mexicans working in plants in Iowa for low wages. Everybody knows it. Why you have immigration rates with Mexicans in Iowa? Okay, with some 2,000 miles north to where they come across the border at. Does it make sense? It's because this is what's going on. It's basically immigration policy, which is easy to do. You can don't tell me in this, Ike, you're a techie, right? It's possible to track every human being that comes in this place and earns 1 penny. You cannot earn 1 penny in the United States without it being tracked. It's impossible. You know where these people are. You know what they do. You know where they work. You probably know where they live and what they drive. Okay. In California, you can be a legal alien, a legal immigrant, and have a driver's license. Okay. They know. They know. They already know. Let's stop it. That's what I say.
Well put there. So, moving on to you, Kaizo, regarding immigration, and BGS mentioned cocaine, and I was laughing because my first thought was, he was saying, "Oh, you can stop the cocaine." And I was like, "Well, they don't want to stop all the cocaine." But then I also remembered that actually, quite recently, cocaine was found in the White House. Like I think it was in a little cubby in the White House.
Shout out to Hunter Biden.
Oh, yeah.
He was dropping off some
somebody,
money, dropping off some money to dad, and forgot his little sack. Okay. Anyway,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
I'm
I
sorry,
mean,
Joe. I'm sorry, Joe. I didn't mean that. Okay.
I'm in it.
yeah, I mean, you don't want to keep
I
out
ain't gonna say it
all the
on here,
cocaine.
but I do. You ain't, explicit, all right? That's sugar, honey, iced tea. Okay for that. That's all right.
All good, all good, all good. So, Kaizo, here's the situation. You're over there in Kenya doing your thing, right? That it tends to be the case that European countries and even some African countries have have a better border security than United States. It's a political football. It's good for riling people up. So typically, so there is an interest, let's say, in the political side of things to keep that hot button issue going. You don't want to keep. You don't want to remove hot button issues because how do you get voters to turn out, right? So you're like, hey, there's this button. I can push it every time and people come out. However, logic would suggest that, hey, the border versus the general immigration and labor and all that kind of these things can be separated from the point of view of the actual, let's say, American citizen, not some large agribusiness owner. It's like, hey, seal the border and then we can talk about these other things, right? So, but what are your thoughts about that fact? Okay. What is your intuition regarding the fact that people always talk. Oh, I think Gavin Newsom was recently being interviewed. Gavin Newsom, current governor of California, he's going to run for president. Was mayor of San Francisco before. He's going to run for president. So I don't know if he's actually running now, but he's going to. That's what he's going to do. And immediately he was asked about the border. He said, "Oh, we have to talk about comprehensive immigration reform." That's what they always say, and it's very annoying. It's really crazy, right? What are your thoughts about the fact that America has these open border situation when they can control everything, but they choose not to control that aspect? Kaiser, you can
Okay,
go ahead.
thanks. Yeah, I'm here. So okay. So obviously, what you mentioned there about having a hot topic for debate is obviously integral to it. But from an economics perspective as well, right? As previous panelists have mentioned already, is that America thrives on cheap labor, and certain key industries that actually generate, let's say, the usual GDP for the nation is basically people providing certain services at a much lower, more basically a high at a competitive rate that actually creates an advantage for them. So this obviously is an advantage for a lot of these companies. I would rather go a hardworking immigrant who's going to work in my field the right way rather than someone who is, let's say, entitled. And by entitled, I simply mean someone who um, requires a certain standard. I'm not making a moral judgment here. So in this case, I think it's mostly a economics situation. Also, I'm sure Americans are not as stupid as we claim. Germany and most of Europe has a very low birth rate. America would actually have a very low birth rate if it wasn't for a lot of these immigrants coming in and actually improving the population. The kids are going to get educated. The kids will actually contribute to a larger, let's say, maybe more of a technical, or let's just say a high IQ, because of these immigrations coming in. Now, the issue is, yes, there are better ways to have it. Selective immigration probably would be a better approach to it. Like, let's say what Australia is doing, or a lot of these European countries are starting with a points-based system to allow, let's say, the people that the industry needs. But if that's the case, all right, I do think America does have a lot of need for all these, let's say, low-wage immigrants as well. So yeah, I think it's mostly a economics situation. Probably also looking at the tax base. Europe right now is suffering from, same with Japan and all of these other first world countries, from a lack of repopulation that will actually pay into the social security system. I think America is looking into it.
Yes, very, 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 very true. One of the reasons why immigration is one of the reasons why America's birth rate, or there's not as much demographic decline over here. Because generally speaking, again, macroeconomically, how do you get growth? You get growth by demographics, in other words, population increase. Or number two, productivity increase, otherwise known as technological advancement. Number three is debt growth. You could just grow by increasing your debt. You could just borrow and ball, right? Now, that has a limit, but generally speaking, we see these things happen. America has increasing debt. We mentioned it earlier. The demographic situation is needed, bring people in. That is there as well. Technology wise, we're not doing as well. Just to mention one of my little pet topics here is that technology has now become synonymous with zeros and ones. It's become synonymous with Meta's new thread that's supposed to compete with Twitter or something. It's like, but meanwhile, if you look around the room you're in, it's the same damn dusty light bulbs, the same internal combustion engine, the same. There's no replicators. There's no Rosie the robot. There is no flying car, right? In terms of energy, transportation, and other things, we're not really getting that boost growth-wise from the technology. Hence, we depend heavily on the cheap labor aspect and also on the increase in debt. Dr. Thunder, what is your ideal immigration situation? Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you believe in open borders? Or do you think the border should be sealed? And then what is to be done then about the labor and whatnot?
Yeah, I believe in secure borders. That seems to be how you define if you're a country or not. Is you have to, okay, this is my land. Now I have to control who comes in to this land. Um, and I mean, it's pretty. That's pretty simple. Um, and I do think that it's politics. There's too much to gain by leaving the borders sort of porous, and I think a great deal of the sort of pushback that I think Trump got for securing the borders, which seems like it's just an easy and a basic thing. And then you're racist because you want to secure the borders. You're biased against folks that don't speak English. Whatever, just a long list of things. Um, I think a great deal of the pushback against him was because he was going to mess with the money, and too many folks, Democrats and Republicans, stand to gain too much by leaving it the way that it is. And even these ridiculous talking points that people would use, that saying stuff like, "Well, the fence is not gonna work, and an actual wall is not possible to build," and I mean, they were talking all of these ways that you know securing the border was not going to work, and that this is just a ruse. They're trying to funnel money somewhere else, when actually they were saying those things because they were concerned about, you know, him messing with the money. So, yes, secure borders is, I think, necessary. I think it's like I mean, it would be like, this is my house. Maybe my house is in an area that's not particularly secure, and I just say, hey, well, I don't need doors in my house, you know? And then when people come in the house, you know, now there's something wrong with me for deciding that I want a door, and I want to lock the door. It's just totally ridiculous. This stuff doesn't even make any sense.
Shout out, shout out, shout out. The house analogy is good. I also like to think about cells. It's like a cell without a cell wall. Now, cell walls are permeable. In other words, the cell controls what it wants to come in and what it wants to go out. So the cell wall is a system for regulating how much of what comes in, how much of what stays out. So a secure border would be a system by which the body, the United States or the cell or whatever, can decide how much of what comes in and so on and so forth. Now, is a border such as the United States is kind
My
of like an
country, my choice.
unregulated. Wow. um, it's like an unregulated kind of system because still somebody. It's kind of like you have this, somebody still gets what they want. In other words, people still get the cheap labor and whatnot, but it's not in an orderly, systematic way that you can account for, right? So it almost seems like the lack of accountability serves somebody. So the border is just kind of crazy. Like this, nobody knows what the sale is letting in, what it's not letting in, or why, right? From your body's perspective, you need that skin to separate you from the outside world. Not just anything just comes in, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, LAR, the immigration question and the border. What do you think about a sealed border? You're open borders kind of guy? And what do you think about the Latinos?
Okay. I think Florida is proving that we need to keep the borders open because obviously, with a population that's over 50% white in Florida, and the job market just went to crap because you can't hire somebody illegal, that's gonna go all over America because somehow we like to say that black people don't want to work, but we don't want to say white people don't want to work. White people don't want to do construction. They don't want to be. They don't want to do manual labor. As BGS talked about cheap labor, as all y'all talked about cheap labor, it's not just cheap labor, it's manual labor. It's labor outside. This country is a country built on white people not wanting to work outside. We got to get somebody else to do it. So, even the people who we need to protect the borders and do what? Okay, we protect the borders because here's the hypocrisy of America. This military can go all over this planet and protect other people's borders. But I just don't know what to do. I don't know how we got 5 tons of cocaine all the way in Boston. I don't understand what happened. It's like, so there is no way to protect the borders in the United States of America because the United States of America has one thing that we don't talk about with capitalism: getting paid for laziness. That's the crux of capitalism. Let me get paid for my laziness off of your labor. Who gonna stop that? Any of these politicians? Does it look, when you look at the Senate, the White House, the Supreme Court, does any of these people look like they ever had a hard day's work in their life? Mm-hmm. I don't think these people ever changed a tire in their life. I don't think they cut the grass of their own house a day in their life. They like to talk this BS about when I was a kid back in my day. Back in your day, you got somebody black to be the lawn man. Not a Mexican. Stop it. The open border policy is ridiculous. It's too much cocaine in America. Like y'all brought up, Hunter Biden. I know somewhere Franklin Saint was like, "That's what I'm talking about. We all in the White House, baby." Like, this is ridiculous. Forget open borders. Forget all that BS. It's ridiculous. Americans don't like to work. Period.
Yes, we've been at a line, the establishment versus anti-establishment trope, which is a trope, a political football, by which people can say things like "drain the swamp," and then you rally people around you. Hey, those guys are part of the establishment. You rally people around you. Hey, the military-industrial complex, there's a revolving door over there. But as a matter of fact, while there are issues with, let's say, managerial capitalism or the administrative state, generally speaking, in the way in which it can calcify, kind of create entrenched interests. And while indeed there are ways of solving, or shall we say, mitigating the issues inherent in such a system, the system is indeed implicit in a big kind of economy or in a big organization, means that you have a big administrative state. There are ways of actually remedying the problems that arise with that, such as sunsetting certain laws, for example. But it's a political football that people play with, and RFK Jr. is one of those people playing that particular political football. And then went to the border. The border is another political football. People want to talk about the comprehensive immigration reform. We can't close the border until we talk about that. And we've been talking about comprehensive immigration reform for 50 years and nothing happens, right? There was another political football, if you will, that I want to start out with now, BGS. It's the science slash anti-science slash who has got the real science uh, conversation, right? The jab is one up, but there are many others, right? And environmental laws is a massive aspect. RFK Jr. comes to mind as well. He's an environmental lawyer. He's out there saying certain kinds of things. He talks about, he uses a buzz term called geoengineering, and people, it's supposed to scare people. Another political football. Oh my God, we don't want to engineer the earth. It's like, what have we been doing ever since we started making fire and stuff? We've been engineering the earth. That's what we do, right? So let's unpack this a little bit. What are your thoughts about this? Oh, science is going too far, or it's not going far enough, or the scientists are lying to you. Oh, let's not GMOs, blah blah blah. You see the arena that I'm going here. What are your thoughts about that? Is there actually a set of stakes that could be laid out, or is this just another kind of political football that people just throw
No, it's
out there,
real.
and then you're going to have some people
No,
on your side?
it's very real. Okay, look at the artificial womb, artificial babies, genetic research, even with um, uh, the new COVID vaccines, the jab, right? I had a genetic scientist, everybody knows her, Nicole Ali. That's what she does, right? I had her look at it, right? And look at it. That is not traditional viral therapy, traditional medicine. That is genetic manipulation. Okay, so it is what it is. The thing is, you got a whole bunch of this stuff. GMOs, genetic manipulation. It is what it is. Okay, but what are the side effects, long-term effects of this? So, I mean, you have this stuff, and you have this stuff coming. Are humans, uh, um, uh, can you do this stuff safely? You're gonna need it. Basically, if you're gonna have more people, and you want to stop the destruction of like water tables and stuff like that, because the biggest thing about uh, of feeding people more meat and raising more animals, okay, it puts a lot of stress on your water supplies, which is something that all the climate change people are not talking about, right? Your water tables are getting destroyed because of increased animal feed, increased farming. Okay, that's not being regulated. At some point, your water tables are going to get stressed by human beings and animals and all this kind of stuff. You're going to have to modify this stuff. So how are you going to do it? It's not that I don't think he's against geomodding, or actually geoengineering the planet, because like you said, we've been doing that since we started making fire, since we started building artificial buildings and stuff like that. We've been doing it forever. The thing is, can you do it responsibly without you know some kind of negative effects? So I think that's what he's talking about. The stuff is going to happen. Okay, you are going to start modifying people's bodies. That we would not live this long. Okay, I think if you're someplace in the jungle, you were blessed to live beyond 30 years of age for the most part, and because most
Mhm.
babies in uh, in a primitive society, like only what 1 in 4 babies will survive. Okay, so in other words, in a state like this where people live an average of 75 to 80 years, you can't do that outside of a modern environment. People say, okay, it's a negative to your health. Yeah, I said, yeah, at one point. Uh, um, like you're from the continent, okay? You know the difference in drinking. If your body's not used to that water, because bugs, you going to get very sick very quickly. Okay. In the United States, we live this long because like it or not, what you say about our food being nuked, our water being nuked, okay, that stuff is sanitized. Okay. It's hard pressed for you to get sick off of food and water here in the United States or in the first world. Okay. That doesn't exist elsewhere. So the thing is, yes. there's negative effects to geomodding and all this the tech that we put into our food and water and growth and stuff like that. You wouldn't have it. You would not have almost 9 billion people on the planet without modifying your environment, without using machinery to grow your food, without uh, uh, having special foods that can be grown like that. Your corn is not natural, right? Whether it's GMO or whether you done it by selective breeding of certain crops, right? We call them monoculture crops. You couldn't have it. So I think he's smart enough to know that there's ways that you can do it and there's ways that you can't do it. Unless we're going to go back to a population of 200 million people on the planet in a natural state, I don't think we're going to hit that far back. What do you think, Ike?
I think this makes perfect sense. Yeah, so it seems like the theme so far has been taking low resolution kind of talking points, such as establishment versus anti establishment, or this kind of science, oh, anti GMO, anti modification, anti geomod type stuff, and breaking it down to something more higher resolution, real stakes, and you lay down some of the real stakes that are out there, right? And one of the, it takes, I like that you mentioned the, let's just talk about beef, right? You talked about meat. It takes a lot of resources to raise that cow, feed that cow a lot of water, grow the grain to feed the cow, transport the cow to the slaughterhouse, kill the cow, pack the meat, blah, blah, blah. And one of the good things that's going to come out of this new meat type of a grown meat in a lab using certain enzymes that act on certain proteins to create meat is that you're going to cut off that whole process. You don't need no baby cows eating grass, drinking water, blah, blah, blah. But there are going to be some people who say, oh my God, now we're going to be creating these things in labs. So, yes, I 100% agree with you. It's about consequences and trade offs. Some of the people who talk about GMOs or wanting to do things more naturally still want to go to Costco and get their evenly sized tomatoes right off the little bag, right? They love that convenience, but they don't want to understand that, look, there's a trade off to that. And it's a question of how we balance it. Yes, 100%. And I'm not coming for RFK. It's a question of increasing the level of resolution on this matter. So, Kaizo, what are your thoughts? Previously, we talked about RNA, the understanding of what the RNA type of quote unquote vaccine is, and population, right? So it therefore becomes a situation that doesn't work, this or that. It's just, hey, look, they rush something out. It's not as effective. It's this RNA technology, blah, blah, blah. It's always gray and complex and about trade-offs and consequences as opposed to what one might be made to understand. So, Kaizo, the question still remains regarding this science versus non-scientific, the consequence BGS mentioned with regards to geomodding and whatnot. But what are your general thoughts on that? Do you think we're going in the right direction? Do you think that so far we are fine? Human beings in general, the Western civilization in general, has managed the trade offs and the consequences of engineering their environment well?
Right. Great question. So I want to start by saying I don't think there is a right way or a wrong way. There's only the inevitable future. If we don't do it, China will. And if China does it, or any of these countries which you kind of hold as a anti-democracy or whatever it is values you have, they will create and breed superior humans. That's just the nature of the game we're doing right now. If everyone is dusty, then there's no issue, right? But this is it's a matter of let's say owning the environment. That's what white to suppress its let's say ailments, right? And I think it's a psychological thing that leads them to do it because of obviously Europe has much less resources, has strong harsh winters. Meanwhile, we more or less developed in a more abundant sort of environment. So anyway, the point here is this: this is the only way forward. And I want to comment on what the brother BGS mentioned there about let's say tribes and stuff. And let's say surviving. I would say that people don't really understand the cost benefit analysis of these sort of things. Yes, there are negative stuff to let's say consuming these things across time, but you are much better off dying from cancer at 70 rather than dying from malnutrition at 5, right? There is like a cost benefit analysis here. So at the end of the day, you can't fully own the environment without getting an alternative consequence. So ultimately, I don't think there's a right or wrong direction. This is the only direction. And in terms of GMO, I'll give you in context of Kenya, right? Kenyans or Africans in general are only able to have food because of GMO, right? GMO, and I want to reduce sort of the misinformation about GMO. Everything is GMO, right? From this is even before our modern understanding of science, right? The moment you take a carrot and you breed it with a carrot that looks fatter, and then you keep breeding that carrot across time, that's GMO already. The only difference is right now we do it at a molecular level because we understand it, but it's literally the same logic, and you're doing the same thing. So everything is GMO, right? The chicken you eat, the broilers, the chicken that matures in 2 months, that's all GMO. So the issue is people won't eat a Star Trek burger. You won't, but your kids will. And I think that's the
Star Trek burger. I haven't heard it called that before. But want to add one point here to what to the iterations that you and BGS have gone through regarding the people whom are likely to get the maximal benefits out of these types of situations. You see, there's some people whom living in this kind of a modern society will be the ones that die of cancer at 60 and 70. But if you're a certain type of individual who knows that there's certain responsibility that you can take, drink water, exercise, not overeat, do the caloric deficit type of ways, which is known to keep both you and rats alive, kind of, shall we say, reduce the deterioration of telomeres, I believe they call it. You can correct me later on if I'm wrong, Kaizo. But basically, the idea is if you are a certain type of individual, and this kind of cuts across the kind of general philosophical conversation about modernity, that modernity really benefits high level individuals because they have the freedoms that come with modernity, right? But they also have a high enough IQ to choose the right types of things. Whereby in the past, where things perhaps were more regimented, where it was more one size fits all for everybody, the modern, that high IQ, high level person might not be so fit. That person whom is able to say, "Hey, yes, I'm going to get all the benefits of technology, benefits of the freedoms which a liberal, Western, rich, industrialized society provides me, and I'm still going to make the right choices." For such an individual is the best time to be alive. Now, Dr. Thunder, what are you hearing? Have we that we've gone way off the mark here?
Say that again. What's the question?
Genetic modification, geoengineering, and whatnot. Have we gone way off the mark? Are we managing the trade-offs and the benefits well in the West, do you think?
Yeah. Generally, I'd say, man, I don't think you get something for nothing. So I think the way that we live, the freedoms that we have, there are certain inevitable outcomes. Um, are the outcomes that we're experiencing, the consequences that we're experiencing, the benefits that we're experiencing, is all that stuff sort of worth it, given all the possibilities? We're still doing a lot better than other places in the world. Um, it's still an environment where you can be born in abject poverty and in one generation totally transform your family forever to filthy rich, and all your descendants. Um, yeah, I mean, so you still so that's so it ends up being the trade-off. There's a volatility there that can be destructive, massively destructive, um, and that can hurt a lot of people. But have we helped more people or hurt more people given uh, the possibilities? I think we've probably helped more people. I'm not saying that we shouldn't try for better and uh, that we don't have a bunch of heathens and cultural issues as a result of all of this freedom and opportunity. But it still seems a lot better than most places in the world. Um, you know, I think of most places in the world being like, in general, if this analogy makes sense, the sort of experience that men have. If you make too many, you could make maybe two mistakes in a row. If they're the right kind of mistakes or the wrong kind of mistakes, then you can end up homeless. It's not that harsh against women, right? They can make more mistakes. They can make more severe mistakes, and it's designed to sort of protect them. If you think of the United States as being a place where more people experience what a woman's life would be like, and other places in the world being more like what a man's experience of life is like, where there's not really that many opportunities for you to make mistakes, and the harsh reality is always there, um, to remind you of your actual station in life. Um, I was driving, my son and I were in the car driving somewhere today, and we got off the highway in a location we're at frequently. And there's a homeless guy, and he has a sign, and he says, he's a father of two, anything will help, this kind of thing. And I know, and was dancing, and that was supposed to be this sort of entertainment for people to give him some money or something. I had not seen this before, right? Usually it's like they will try the I can hardly move. I'm having a hard time even standing up, because I'm so hungry, or because, I've had such a hard time. This guy is smiling and dancing. And it just seems to me that if that can be the case, even for someone that's homeless here, that seems a lot better than all the possible, um, than the possibilities, than what seems to be the lowest state in other places in the world. So I went all over the place, but yeah.
Mhm. Yes, shout out to you and Jordan Peterson and all the other people there keeping track of Steven Pinker, keeping track of the people whom have been lifted out of poverty. You could just take China that comes along with all these kind of technological improvements, if you will, and lifting people out of poverty, giving them a better life. So overall, yes, we from a utilitarian perspective, we're doing well. Now, think about us modifying whole future, science fiction type future, where, as Kaiser put it, you're eating, or your grandkids are eating Star Trek burgers with the replicator and all that kind of stuff. And we have this crazy kind of dome over the earth that modifies the oxygen and, gives us just the right dose of, we're just microdosing on cocaine every day. But what are your thoughts about this whole environmental thing, Mr. Eliar?
Star Trek burger was me in the comment section. I ain't eating no Star Trek burgers. It's not happening. Now, here's the thing. Let's just do the American stereotype. Who eats modified food more? Poor people or rich people?
Poor people, man.
Yeah.
Oh, so basically what you're telling me is, oh, here, take this broke ass Star Trek burger and hope you die early, but I'm gonna eat steak. No, no. Sounds like that's a hustle to me. You know, I'm not gonna take the jab, but I'm gonna eat McDonald's. That's the same hustle. It's the same hustle. It's at a point where, yeah, things are genetically modified. I get it. But the question is also, would you? And normally the answer, yeah, if I could afford to do it, I eat regular stuff. The problem with humanity at this
Fresh game.
particular point is because I would say America's form of science has been destructive. I forgot who was talking about King America giving people bad seeds in Africa so they can't grow food. That's destructive. But the way we grow food in America is destructive. What we're basically trying to do is let's destroy all the food and jack up the prices for the real stuff and get people addicted to eating junk all the time. You know, I don't really care about the GMO personally because really our biggest issue is salt and sugar. If you get off of salt and sugar, you'll do pretty good. But guess what? It don't taste as good. It's not as natural. I mean, it's more natural. Let's just put it like that. So no, like all this stuff it's beginning to be. I joke about it. I've talked about it before. It's beginning to be idiocracy. You want people poor, fat, eating, drinking Slurpees all day, and then you want rich people in the conclave eating nice food. Question is, which way you gonna go? Because ultimately, to me, the issue is going to be our ongoing losing battle with allowing technology to make us dumber and dumber and dumber anymore. Or how long it'll take. It ain't that, it's not as difficult as people make it to be. We're basically saying, let's do GMO because I don't want to plant and water none of this stuff. Yeah, give me a Star Trek burger because I don't want to do nothing. And truth be told, your ass is going to be eating chitlins in the form of burgers and you're not going to know it and you're going to get sick. And they not going to clean them chitlins. So, I can't trust the way America does things. I'm sorry. You act like this country has done everything for our benefit.
Nope.
You're going to wind up with people being steak crack dealers, getting locked up, What was you doing? Oh, man, I was slinging kilos of real steak, man. They didn't want us to do that. But I was making a killing. So it's like, eat as healthy as you can, work out as much as you can now. Because if you don't, you're going to pay for it. We're all going to die, but I'm just saying, make your life as best as possible by trying to do the right thing.
Try to do the right thing indeed. And we're at that point where we're going to be giving our closing thoughts. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in the chat, it's not too late to super chat, show your appreciation. The sandwich gang, right? It's you can hit up Dr. Thunder on the cash sandwich, right? And the overall thing today was been to kind of elucidate and bring higher resolution to some of the talking points that come up in presidential elections, whether it be the anti-establishment, I'm going to drain the swamp type of talk, or the borders type of talk, or the seemingly anti-scientific stance or pro-science stance that some people take, right? These are all low resolution. So we're trying to raise the level of resolution and talk about, for example, on the science thing, talk about the consequences and the trade-offs. LAR put a nice little wave. He put in economic terms what I was mentioning earlier by just saying high level, high IQ people benefit the most. Yes, high level, high IQ people also probably going to be richer people. And they're going to eat the right things. They're going to drink water. Okay. They're going to exercise and they're going to benefit. And also from a utilitarian perspective, Dr. Thunder gave, from a massive number perspective, yeah, it's either they eat that crappy burger, the Star Trek burger, or they die at 5, as Kaizo said, right? So, hey, you got to take your picks there. As someone said in the chat, the cleanest dirty shirt in the laundry is what the name of the game is, right? There is no perfectly clean shirt. You just got to pick up the cleanest dirty shirt in the laundry. So, BGS, what are your final thoughts? We've gone through the run the gamut here regarding these. We kind of focused on RFK and some of his talking points, and we went through them. Any closing thoughts regarding the?
Yeah, you're barking pretty bad, Ike. I think BGS. I
Can
think
you
you
hear
might.
me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to respond to LR real quick. There's a reason they call Whole Foods whole paycheck. Okay, because it's very expensive nowadays to actually raise food naturally. Okay, it really is. Unless you live in, unless really, if you want to eat natural food, okay, where it's not processed, it can't be processed. Move to a third world developing country. They can't afford all the processing and sanitizing the food that we do. Okay, trust and believe. Ghana has some of the best food I've ever tasted. Okay,
BGS.
okay,
Business idea.
yes, sir.
Half foods. Can't afford whole, but we're
Huh?
gonna get you half foods.
It
Half foods.
what happened? Well, the thing is, if you want to eat the way you want to eat, okay, and you want to do all that kind of stuff, you're going to have to give up a whole bunch of stuff like regulation and clean food and that kind of stuff. To where, yeah, you're gonna suffer, okay, and your population is going to go down because because the carrying capacity of natural foods like we want it to this size population gonna happen. So what do you want? What do you want your outcome? What do you want your lifestyle to be like? And what are you willing to trade for it? So if you're willing to go back to an agrarian society where there's all natural food with a smaller population, go for it. Okay. Just understand that you won't live in what we call the United States anymore. Okay, because it's going to be something different. So if you want to do that, you want to go back to the 1800s, go ahead. It's up to you. The thing is, there's going to be trade-offs. There's going to be trade-offs. What do you want? So, most people that live in developing countries, they don't live past 50 for the most part, right? And you want to live to be 75, 80 years old, there's a reason for that, okay? No matter what you say, even the average person that eats Star Trek burgers lives to be 75 and 80 years old, okay? And a person that eats natural chicken without the preservatives and that kind of stuff, okay, they have a lot of infant mortality, okay. The most of them don't live past the age of 45. Okay, you just look at the population pyramid of any of the undeveloped countries, right, where there are all these natural foods. Their population pyramids are very narrow. Okay, you don't have very many people that live past 50. If you want to you want to eat natural with all the enhancements that we have in the United States, you can do that. But things like I said, like Thomas Sowell said, there are no solutions. There's only trade-offs. What are you willing to trade for it? And in politics, the same way. There's a reason that you live in an empire. There's a reason that you live a first world lifestyle, and it takes a lot of force and a lot of deep state. Are you willing to live style by half? Are you willing to, instead of eating 3,500 calories a day, 4,000 calories a day, down to 1,500, and live very simply, okay, without all this technology? If you're willing to do that, and American people are willing to do that in mass, then the most of the military budget that we spend, like $1 trillion, well, really $1.5 trillion, you don't need it. You don't need to impose your will on anybody else. You don't need to impose your dollar on anybody else. Okay. The thing is, your lifestyle will change. Now, I for one would love the American people and the politicians come in front and tell the American people honestly, this is what we're doing in your name, all over the world. This is what we do behind the scenes in your name. Okay. But the thing is, the trade-off is you get to live in the empire. You get to live this first world lifestyle with all your Xboxes and TV stations and cable and internet and clean water and all the other kind of crap that comes along with it. Are you willing to trade that off for something simpler? If you are, then we don't need all this infrastructure. That's just what I'm going to say. That's my closing thought.
All right then, Kaizo, if you guys can still hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree 100% with BGS. There's nothing for me to add there.
LAR, any closing thoughts on this, and then Thunder will take us out.
Yes, America will have a BBL future at this rate. God bless America.
Woo!
Yeah. So, in my sort of monologue, I said something about uh, how sort of so you have these three pictured politicians on the thumbnail, and they're all massively disliked for different reasons. Um, and at least in my lifetime, uh, it seemed like Trump had the most sort of unison voice media pushback and just going after him 24/7. And if you like Trump or don't like Trump, if you think that what they were going after him for was valid stuff or not, it still seemed to be uh, not the same as those prior. And then you look at uh, Kennedy, and goodness, it seems like the same thing. And some have even characterized it as even being worse, a more aggressive and assertive pushback. And um, so my this question about if is Robert Kennedy Jr. really anti-establishment is an interesting question because in the one sense I believe that the reason that he's being pushed back on and Trump are is because they're not sort of deep state um, proponents, right? They and so I think that that seems to be obvious by many of the questions that they ask, and many of the topics that they're willing to discuss. So the question is the massive dislike of Trump and of Kennedy, is that going to make them, uh, you know, is it going to be too much? Is it going to end up being too much? And so we have this election coming up. We'll see how how everything lands. But I think it is interesting that these two candidates who really are, uh, they seem to be saying things that are not the right things to say for either one of their parties. Um, Trump was hated even, you know, for as a Republican candidate. I mean, Republicans didn't like him. You had that never Trumpers thing, and Kennedy is a progressive, but you have a lot of progressives going after him. They're trying to get him deplatformed and trying to get him canceled. Trying to get Joe Rogan canceled because he had, um, uh, RFK on his show talking about the jab. So pretty interesting kind of dynamic here. And so maybe it's not just simply the sort of Republican bad, Democrat good sort of usual media bias. Maybe there's something else that's at work in both sort of Democrats and Republicans have something to lose, money to lose possibly. So anyhow, and someone just came through with a super chat. Let me highlight that super chat. Thank you very much for that. Saying covering for everyone. Thank you very much, Don McKee 90, the big $10 super chat. And that's going to be our time.
Peace out.
All right. See y'all later.